In this lesson, we will explore Kente cloth and creating a Kente cloth of our very own made out of paper. Kente cloth comes from a textile practice that originated in Ghana centuries ago. Weaving Kente cloth is a cultural tradition of the Ashanti people, and these fabrics were originally used exclusively to dress kings and their courts. Each block pattern and color has a distinct name and meaning. Some common colors found in Kente cloth include black, red, blue, yellow, gold, green, white, purple, maroon, as well as pink, where each color represents a different meaning. So how is Kente cloth made? Kente cloth is woven on a horizontal strip loom, which produces a narrow band of cloth about 4 inches wide. Several of these strips are carefully arranged and hand sewn together to create a cloth of a desired size. Most Kente weavers are men.
We are going to get started on our Kente cloth lesson. I have chosen some colors that are traditionally used in Kente cloth. These include yellow, red, green, and pink. There's also others as well that we had talked about. You're also going to need a pencil, a ruler for a very short amount of time, and a pair of scissors. We're going to first focus on creating our loom for our Kente cloth. First, I'm going to choose a color that I'm going to use for my loom. I'm going to choose yellow because that's going to be really easy for you to see on the video. I'm going to move those pieces of paper out of the way. So when you are creating your loom, you are going to need a pencil, a ruler, and a pair of scissors. So the first thing that I am going to do is I am going to draw a line across my paper. Now, you don't want it to be like this. You don't want it to be way down here. You want your line to be right about there. We don't want it so close. We want it just about there. That's about like a 1/2 inch. It doesn't have to be a 1/2 inch, but that looks just fine, and I'm just going to draw a line across. So there we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my ruler at the bottom of my piece of paper, okay? And I am going to mark a small little line at each of the numbers on my ruler, all the way across my piece of paper. And I can see that that is 8 inches across, okay? And do the same thing on the other side. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my ruler and I'm just going to draw some lines across. So I'm lining it up, that line to that line. Making sure to hold that in place. And one last line. Line it up as best as I can. And there we go. Perfect. That looks awesome. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my scissors and I'm going to cut all the way from the bottom of my line to here. I'm going to stop here. I'm not going to cut all the way up. We don't want this to turn into strips. This is going to be our loom for our weaving. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut right on the line. That's why we made these lines. You can try to cut your own lines, but it's nice to keep them straight so you'll have a nice even loom. There's one. Start from the bottom. There's 2. There's 3. I'm just starting from the bottom and I'm cutting all the way to that line that I did horizontally across the top. Stop, see? So I can see all these are stopping right at that line. I have 2 more that I need to cut. Whoops. And 1 more. And there is my loom. So as you can see, if I just go around like that, it all stays together. So that's really important that you stop all your cuts right at that line. When you finish your loom, don't try to play with it. You don't want it to rip. This is the really, really important piece that's gonna keep your kente cloth together when we start adding in our weaves. All right, now that we have our wonderful loom set, now we're gonna be trying our warp and weft when we weave. We're gonna be adding in our colors. So, I have my colors here that I had before. What I'm going to do is I'm gonna cut these into strips, okay? And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut them the long way. It does look like the short way will fit, but it's gonna be a lot easier to do your weaving with a longer piece. Now, you could measure these out if you wanted to. If you really, really want them to be like really even, perfect strips, you can do that. But you can also just cut straight across if you'd like. Another method that you could use is actually folding your paper. So I'm actually folding it. And you could fold it again. So I kind of opened it, folded that. And you could even fold that again. Like that. And then this guy, fold back, line that up. And now you have some even strips that you can cut on the line. So these are just a couple of little tricks that you can use to make some nice straight strips for yourself. Usually, Mr. Keela has a paper cutter to cut these nice straight strips, but this might make it just a little bit easier for us to have those really nice straight lines instead of going through the measuring. If you want to measure, you can absolutely do that, but I'm just kind of working to create my strips. You don't have to fold, you can kind of just do it freehand as well, but whatever works easier for you. So I'm just cutting these guys out from each other, taking my time. There's another one, and there's another one. And just cutting out my strips. And again, they do not have to be perfect. Try your best. Mine aren't perfectly even. That's okay. I think I'm just gonna try to do some of these guys freehand. So that looks like a nice strip size. And I am cutting all the way down. And I don't have to cut my entire piece of paper. I'm kind of just cutting a few pieces. I did like 4 reds. I think I'm gonna do 4 greens as well, and I think I'm then gonna do 4 of my purple ones. So I'm just making my strips. So again, you can do it the folded way, you don't have to do it the folded way, whatever is easier for you. Okay. So I have a couple green strips there, and now I'm just gonna cut a couple of my fuchsia colored strips. And again, take your time, go slow. I've had a lot of experience with cutting, so I'm pretty good at cutting strips out quickly, but just take your time. You might need to cut out more strips. Your strips might be different colors than mine. Remember, you could use blues, grays, whites, all sort of fantastic things. So now I have my strips. That step is done. So far we have our loom and we have some fantastic strips that we are going to weave. So now we're going to move on to our weaving. So you have your strips here. Maybe you want them to go in a pattern. The choice is yours. Maybe you want it to be 2 fuchsias, 2 greens, 2 reds. The choice is yours. Maybe you want it to be random, okay? But the way we're going to do this is by going under one of our flaps of our loom and then over one of our flaps of our loom. So ready? So my first one's gonna go under, so I'm gonna start with the bottom of my loom. See how that piece of paper went right underneath? Now I'm gonna go over this one. See how this paper's over it? Now I need to go under. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lift this part of my loom, and now the strip is under it. Next one, over. So next in my pattern is under. Under, under, over, under, over, under, over. Next one needs to be under, and I'm gonna pull my strip a little bit to make it fit. And now my weave is done. Look at that. That looks perfect. So awesome. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a little tiny bit of glue here. And push it in place. And then I'm gonna take this part here, add a little bit of glue, and push it in place. Now I can cut the end. And I have my first weave of my Kente cloth. I think I'm gonna do a different color now. We do not want this to look the same. So if I did the same exact thing, that piece of paper is gonna slide right over. We don't want that to happen. So now we need to do the opposite. Our first pattern was under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over. Now we need to do the opposite. Over, under, over, under. Ready? So this first strip's gonna be over, and my next strip is going to be under. Look at that. Over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under. Now we have a second weave, and it is looking so awesome. These are so much fun to come to life, and it's nice that we have the longer strip because then we can cut it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I push this strip nice and close up to my fuchsia one. We don't want it way down here. We want it to be pushed up like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of glue. So I'm going to peel that back. I have my glue there, glued down. I want that to be in place. So now I'm going to take this, I'm going to add a little bit of glue, and I am going to give my Kente cloth a trim. And that looks awesome. Now I'm going to go back to the original pattern. So I did on my last one, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under. I want to go back to under, over. So here I go. I'm going to take my red strip now, and I'm going to go under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over. And now I have that repeated pattern again for my next weave in my Kente cloth. and I'm going to do just what I did on the first two, add a little bit of glue so it stays in place, and give it a little trim. And it is looking absolutely amazing. We are going to continue now on our next strip to be over, under, and we're going to continue that all the way down our Kente Cloth loom.
Alrighty, so now that our weave is complete, you can see that I left some space at the very bottom of my Kente cloth. The reason why I left some space is because I didn't want to overfill my loom, so my strips would start to fall out, and also I wanted to add an interesting kind of fringed end. The way I'm doing that is I'm just making small cuts just up to my last red weave to give it a nice fringed edge, to make it look like it's a little bit more like cloth rather than just paper. You can just kind of flare those little fringes with your finger to make it look believable, like it's an actual Kente cloth. All right, we're moving on to our fourth and final step, adding our symbols to our Kente cloth. As you can see on this photo that I provided you with, there are a few examples of some very simple designs and symbols that you can use on your Kente cloth. You want to make sure that your Kente cloth has pattern. Focus on simple things like triangles or zigzags or diamonds or rectangles. The simpler, the better. Sometimes less is more. You want to make sure that when you're creating your Kente cloth, as you will watch, is that focus on one color at a time to do the same exact pattern. Use inspiration from these symbols that you can see in that picture that I showed in a video earlier to help inspire the different designs you use in your own Kente cloth. As you can see, I'm using a Sharpie marker for my Kente cloth designs. You can use a black Crayola marker if you would like. Black is going to show up best, but it does not have to be Sharpie. But a marker is most definitely going to show up best when you're creating these different symbols and patterns. I finished all of my purple spaces or pink spaces, and now I'm just going to carefully color in some of the triangles. I'm going to do this for each of the sections of my purple spaces or pink spaces on my Kente cloth. Take your time. Do a really, really nice job on this step. This is the final bit. We worked so hard doing our weaving. Now we're really bringing it to life. One color at a time, one step at a time. Nice and slow work. All right, I finished my purple/pink spaces. Now I'm moving on to my green spaces. I'm going to make a diamond inside of a diamond for all of these. I'm not trying to make these really challenging symbols. I'm making them very, very simple. You want them to all be the same. This is a pattern. You're not going to do a heart in one space and then a smiley face in another space. We're focusing on symbols that are inspired by real Kente cloth. And you want them to look the same. We're creating a pattern. All right, I finished my green spaces. Now I'm moving on to my red spaces. I'm just doing one step at a time. As you can see, I did my purple spaces, then I did my green spaces. Now I'm doing my red spaces. I'm making sure I'm moving slow, doing nice, even lines. And the reason why I'm moving so quickly on this video is because I actually fast forward through. So I'm actually working at this speed that you're seeing right now the entire time. The video is just sped up. All right, I am on to my very last part. I am just going to do a simple rectangle in between all of my colors on the yellow part, my loom. So I'm doing a vertical rectangle then a horizontal rectangle. Vertical rectangle is standing straight up, and the horizontal rectangles are kind of laying on their side. I'm going to fill these in all of those spaces on my loom. This is my final step of my Kente Cloth project.